In the dead of night, amidst the fog and decay of post-war England, a man armed with acid crafted a reign of terror so chilling it still haunts the corridors of criminal history. What if the monster responsible for these unspeakable acts was actually hiding in plain sight? This is the harrowing tale of John George Haig, the acid bath murderer. Born in 1909, John George Haig would grow up to become one of the most notorious serial killers of his time. Behind his unassuming demeanor lay a cunning mind, capable of manipulation and cruelty beyond belief. In the shadows of a city struggling to rebuild after the ravages of war, Haig lurked with a singular, horrific purpose. Haig was no ordinary murderer. Unlike many of his contemporaries, his method was as bizarre as it was brutal. He believed that by dissolving the bodies of his victims in acid, he could erase every trace of his crimes entirely. But this belief would prove to be his undoing. In a premeditated dance with death, Haig lured unsuspecting victims into his deadly trap. He would entice them with promises of financial gain, friendship, or business opportunities, only to seal their fate behind closed doors. Once isolated, his victims were led to a grim workspace where acid, a corrosive cocktail of deadly chemicals, awaited. Haig's technique was disturbingly methodical. The acid would be poured over the body, reducing flesh and bone to nothing more than a morbid slurry. He once boasted that the acid could eat away all evidence, a belief so profound that he even discarded the personal belongings and documents that might link him to the crime. Rarely, if ever, did his victims' bodies leave behind a trace, but the unthinkable happened when one victim's body, partially dissolved, revealed microscopic traces, clues that would eventually unravel Haig's carefully constructed facade. Each victim entered Haig's world with hopes of a better future, only to be ensnared in a nightmare. There was the quiet accountant, lured by the promise of lucrative investments, whose life was extinguished in a matter of minutes. The gentle housekeeper, who had dedicated her life to caring for others, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of grief and unanswered questions. In whispered confessions from the past, survivors and acquaintances recalled how Haig exuded charm and trustworthiness. Yet, beneath this veneer lay a remorseless predator who would stop at nothing to keep his secret buried in acid. The unraveling of the acid bath mystery. For months, the bodies had vanished without a trace, fueling a haunting mystery. It wasn't until a painstaking investigation, spurred by an anomaly in the acid residue, that the authorities began to see a pattern. Rare forensic techniques, in their infancy at that time, started to detect traces of uncommon chemicals and unusual markers in the remaining fragments. Investigators pieced together the unthinkable. A serial killer was at work, one who believed that acid was a foolproof eraser of all crimes. The very tool he trusted to destroy evidence would ultimately betray him. Each rare fact uncovered, from the unique chemical composition of the acid to the remnants of personal items clinging to dissolved flesh, painted a picture of calculated horror. The climactic confrontation. The turning point came when one victim's partially dissolved body was exhumed, not entirely consumed by acid. It was this grisly discovery that sparked a full-scale investigation. In a climactic confrontation that could have been lifted straight from a horror film, the authorities raided Haig's hideout. Inside, they found chilling remnants of his modus operandi, buckets stained with corrosive burns, and personal belongings barely recognizable under layers of chemical residue. As Haig was led away in handcuffs, his calm, almost eerie expression remained. It was as if he were already savoring the irony of his fate, a man who had tried to erase his crimes, now facing the inescapable stain of justice. The trial and the final irony. In the courtroom, the evidence was irrefutable. Haig's meticulous records, the rare forensic clues, and the shattered lives of his victims coalesced into a case that stunned the nation. He stood accused not just of murder, but of an almost macabre defiance of nature itself. The attempt to liquefy human life into nothingness. During the trial, Haig maintained a disturbing calm, even relishing the notion that his victims' lives could be reduced to chemical equations. His cold detachment was met with revulsion and terror by those who heard his words. The final irony was as stark as it was cruel. The very acid he had used to obliterate his crimes had left behind enough evidence to ensure that he would never escape justice. Convicted on all counts, Haig was sentenced to death, a fate that sealed his legacy as one of history's most infamous serial killers. His execution marked the end of a reign of terror, but the memories of his victims and the horrifying methods he employed continue to echo through the annals of criminal history. The chilling aftermath and legacy. Even after his death, the legacy of John George Haig lingers like a specter. His gruesome story serves as a grisly reminder that evil can often hide behind the most unassuming facades. The acid bath murders force society to confront the fragility of life and the depths of depravity that one man could sink to in his quest for control and obliteration. Criminologists continue to study Haig's methods, searching for the rare clues that might explain how such a cold, calculated killer could operate undetected for so long. Historians note the peculiarities of his case, the oddities in his record, the chilling confidence in his own twisted logic, and the final, fatal irony of his reliance on acid as a weapon against the truth. A warning in the shadows. As the tale of the acid bath murderer draws to a close, one question remains, echoing in the dark. How can such horrors lurk behind the most mundane facades? In the silent spaces of forgotten alleys and abandoned factories, the memory of Haig's crimes serves as a warning, a reminder that the face of evil can be disturbingly ordinary. Viewers, remember this tale not only as a chronicle of unspeakable violence, but as a call to remain ever vigilant. In the quiet moments, when the world seems safe and predictable, the shadows may conceal truths more terrifying than our worst nightmares. John George Haig's legacy is etched in the annals of horror, a grim testament to how a twisted mind can exploit even the most seemingly mundane tools to commit acts that defy comprehension. As you step back into the light of day, ask yourself, what hidden horrors lie beneath the surface of normalcy? Sleep with this question in your mind, for sometimes the most terrifying monsters are those who walk among us. Like and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss a tale from the dark side of history.